What is job seeking like in the SEO industry in 2025, and how has it changed, and how will it change? This is my conversation with Nick Leroy on this week's episode of Search with Candour, and we're going to talk all about jobs in SEO.
A hot take right off the top. People have been talking about the death of SEO since day one. That's not new and that's not scary itself. But I will admit, this last year, like 2025, is the first time I've ever just taken a step back and was like, wow, I wonder if my skill set's going to be relevant in 5 years. AI is not going to kill SEOs, but it's going to kill the lazy. And I think that's what it is. Like, there's a line in the sand right now. Right now, the biggest opportunities within our skill sets aren't actual SEO skills, if you will. It really is effective communication. Because here's one thing that AI is never going to be able to do. One of those skill sets that I truly believe is going to be like AI proof and is what's going to make the difference between somebody who is looking for a job and is 90% and somebody who is at the 97% is going to be that ability to communicate and create performance narratives in a way that resonates with leaders to take action.
Hello and welcome to Search with Candour. This is the podcast where I interview the best and brightest minds across SEO and we talk all things search marketing. I am Jack Chambers Ward, I am your host, and I would hugely appreciate if you can like us on YouTube, subscribe on there, of course leave us a comment down below. You can leave comments on Spotify, on YouTube, rate us on Apple Podcasts as well. I would hugely appreciate any engagement you can give the show. And without further ado, I am joined by Nick Leroy this week, and Nick, if you don't already know, runs SEOjobs.com. So Nick knows a lot about what is happening in the industry and the kind of things people are looking for in terms of jobs in the SEO industry. And that's kind of the topic for this week. We're going to talk about what has changed over the last few years, what you should be thinking about learning to upskill yourself to be better prepared in the industry as it is shifting so much, and where we think the industry is going over the next few years as well. Like I said, Nick has a ton of experience working in the industry, both agency, in-house, and freelancing, and of course runs SEOjobs.com, so knows a lot about the job market at the moment as well. So if you are thinking about, like I said, finding a new job, career progression, all that kind of stuff, this is the perfect episode for you. And without further ado, I will hand you over to myself to introduce Nick Leroy and hopefully, like I said, enjoy this fantastic conversation. My guest this week is an independent SEO consultant who has worked in search marketing for over 15 years. You may recognize his writing from some of the biggest publications in the industry, including Search Engine Land, Search Engine Journal, Moz, OnCrawl, and Ahrefs. You may even recognize his face and voice from other fantastic podcasts such as Crawling Mondays, Content and Conversation, and the SEO Video Show. He is the creator of the brand new, freshly relaunched at time of recording SEO for Lunch newsletter. Congratulations, by the way, Nick. And especially relevant for this conversation, the creator of SEOjobs.com. Welcome to Search with Candour. Finally, Nick Leroy.
Yes, thank you so much, Jack. I'm very excited. I feel like we've put this off for too long.
Absolutely. Yeah. You and I have we've chatted a couple of, I think it's mostly LinkedIn, maybe back when Twitter wasn't an absolute hellscape and SEO Twitter was a thing. And I've always been meaning to be like, right, let's book a date in, let's actually have a conversation. And then you contacted me and I was like, oh my God, thank you, Nick, for finally sorting this out.
Yeah, no, when you had that post on, it was like, now is the time. We got to do this. Lock it in.
Exactly. You can nail us both down and get us there. And I mentioned in the little intro section there, obviously, congratulations on the fresh relaunch of SEO for Lunch. I think the direction you've taken it in, I think, is going to be relevant to the conversation. So I'm going to tie it in a little bit. And obviously, we'll talk about the state of the job industry and everything as a whole as well. But I love your idea of taking it towards the personality-driven side of things, the opinion-driven side of things, and away from, and I know you mentioned Market Eye in core updates as well, away from the news side of things, which I think is
Right.
covered so much, right?
No,
Was
I
that,
think it's very important. Like I said, we'll talk
yeah,
about it before, but there's definitely a lot of strategy behind it, or at least perspective of what the strategy is. So definitely happy to talk about it more. But thank you. I'm glad that you in the industry have been pretty receptive. It's pretty scary to shut something down that you've been doing for 8 years every week. So,
And had like
you know what? We'll see where it goes.
11,000 subscribers or something, right? Like that's not a small number. Yeah, we've just crossed 10,000 with core updates, so we're trying to catch up as much as we can.
There you go.
But yeah, I think that is hugely relevant to a lot of the conversations I've definitely been having on the podcast over the last year, 18 months or so. And I think it's a lot of this shift towards personalities and opinions, and you want the direct access to real people rather than having to go through all of the crap that we've seen on the internet over the last decade or so. And I think
Exactly.
you mentioned it, right? It was based on subscriber feedback as well, right? This
Mhm.
is what people want to hear. They want to hear your opinion from the last 15 years of you working in this industry and all the things you've seen in the jobs as a consultant, agency side, all that kind of stuff. That's, I think, where a lot of all the juicy stuff happens. Is why I want to have conversations with
Yep.
yourself, Nick, and
I
get
agree
into that kind of
100%.
stuff. And it
Yeah,
makes a
you
huge
nailed it.
difference to not just like summarizing everything, because like you said, there are plenty of other places that can do that. Mark and I try and do a little bit of personality into our newsletters as much as we can.
No,
Maybe a
you
little
guys have
snarky
done a
comment
great
here and
job.
there.
Like, I think one of the biggest issues with newsletters these days is everybody's is getting so long. And when you
Yeah,
guys came out, like, I just loved the quick hits. That's just kind of like not even, a full description. It's just like the link is the description. It's like it either is pertinent to you or it's not. So you
yeah,
guys are doing a great
exactly.
job.
Thank you, thank you. That was like the primary goal for us, was to like nail it down, boil it down as much as we can. One ad, the podcast, Mark's tips, and right at the top you get like 8 to 10 news things
Yep.
in. I think it's like 3 lines or less. So we literally limit ourselves to like how much text we can put in there. Keep it as simple and straightforward as possible. And I
Yeah, and
think
I'll
that
give you a quick shout out too. I
mm,
remember sending Mark a note. I don't think I actually copied you on it, so shame on me. But early on when you guys launched it, you had a weekly notice that was just like nothing cool happened last week. So it's like you weren't jamming stuff in there for the
yes,
sake of
yeah,
like
yeah,
having a newsletter. And I was just like, yes, I love that. Like it's not I need to have something here so then
we need
I
to
can
fill the
put
space.
yeah, exactly. So, yeah, no, I think between you and Aleda, you guys are doing a really good job recapping, and I'm happy to kind of hand that baton over, and then just kind of see, where things go, and we'll see how it is. It's going to be a little bit more work, but I think it'll be valuable for many reasons that we'll continue to talk about with the job market.
Yeah, definitely. I know that, so having similar conversation of somebody I know, very well, Noah from the SEO community, and talking about what he's been doing with the newsletter recently, and again leaning into that kind of personality-driven, opinion-based stuff. I think that is where we're seeing a lot of content go, and I think that's a lot of conversation around where we're seeing kind of, I hate to use the word influencer, but like people with followings and things like that that people want to hear from. To briefly tangent us, hello ADHD, I found an email from you from February 2024. Just subscribed last week. Love how easy it is to skim and read your emails. Keep up the great work. Nice and easy. So you kept it short, nice and short and sweet as well, Nick. I appreciate
Yeah.
that.
We've all gotten those emails and the tweets and the tags that's like, the the encyclopedia. It's just like, oh, it's like,
Exactly.
that's what ChatGPT is for. So I could copy that and be like, what did they try to say?
Yeah. Summarize this for me, for God's
Exactly.
sake. But I think you've created a nice little segue there for me, because ChatGPT is going to be a big discussion point, AI and LLMs and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, sir.
But let's not get to that just yet. I think we'll draw the bigger picture before we get into the horrors and specific details and existential dread and all the fun things that we talk about in 2025. I guess we want to dive into the state of SEO jobs in 2025. I know you have discussed this many times on other podcasts and kind of covered it, but it feels like it's a pretty tumultuous, scary time. And I feel like, I don't know, I mentioned the conversation we have with Russ on Content and Conversation. That was at the beginning of last year, right? And that was, oh wow, it's pretty scary and pretty tumultuous. It's even more so now, 18 months later, it feels like. Am I right in saying that, just from an outsider's perspective?
Absolutely. I mean, just kind of like a hot take right off the top, you and I both know people have been talking about the death of SEO since day one. Like, that's not new, and that's not scary itself. We know that most of us love and hate SEO because it's always changing and evolving. But I will admit, this last year, like 2025, is the first time I've ever just kind of taken a step back and was like, wow, I wonder if my skill set's going to be relevant in 5 years.
Mm.
And it's like, what it really did was it at first, it kind of freaked me out. And I kind of went into like the dark hole of just like, oh, Google's coming after me, my clients hate me, type thing. And then it just turned more into, no, similar to everything else. It's about pivoting, it's about showing your value, and then just some of these other skill sets that we'll talk about more. But there's so much more than just pull these numbers from analytics to justify your value. And again, there's things that we can do and should do that AI can't do yet.
Yes, big yet on the end of that sentence as always, which is the scary thing. But I know you did a brilliant job. The State of SEO jobs report you guys did with Previsible and diving into a lot of the data of what has been happening recently. And I think you're totally right. The conversation has been around SEO is dead, SEO is dying, PPC is dead, marketing is dead, everything, the internet is dead. Like everything is dead these days, and AI and the robot overlords are here to just completely take over. In terms of raw numbers and actually getting into a little glimpse into that data, are there fewer jobs actually being posted in general, or is it more like a diversification and shift of jobs, or do we feel like this is actually a shrinking of the industry as a whole? Is there kind of a general kind of trend either way?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can say from the data itself, it's definitely shrinking. But I will admit, we kind of worked with a smaller subset. But I think what's even more scary is it's not only that the job listings are fewer than previous years, but the rate in which people are being made redundant in their search roles is significantly higher. So it almost compounds the fact that, 5x amount of people are getting laid off than people are looking to hire.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of industries are seeing that in the moment, where you see the like 300 applicants, 500 applicants, 1,000 applicants. Like, how is anyone ever possibly reading that many applications?
And they're
And it
not.
makes that exactly right. They're absolutely not doing that, because you would never do anything else ever again. In almost in like a, do you read the terms and conditions of everything you use? Like, no. There's that infographic where it's like, oh, if every we were talking about Macs before we started recording, every Apple user read everything about all the different pieces of software and hardware they use, that it would take like 6 weeks of reading nonstop, no sleep, no breaks, just like, here's how your iPhone works and all the legalities behind that. Nobody's actually reading through all those job applications, but they're happening.
Absolutely.
Everybody, there's always like the quick apply buttons and all the kind of like all the super basic stuff. And I feel like I always have this conversation with my parents, being complete Luddites and not digital at all, and not really understanding what I do apart from talking to a microphone and a camera occasionally. There's a whole conversation like, just send them your CV, just send them your resume. I'm like, that's not been a thing for like my entire adult life. I turn 35 soon. I have been an adult for long enough that the internet has been around basically. Like, that's not a thing anymore. My dad's always just like, we'll walk into a store and just hand them your CV and say, shake the manager's hand. I'm like, what manager? They're off. They're probably in a different city or a different country. That's not how this works anymore.
Right. You're gonna get arrested if you do that now, if you just
Yeah,
jump into
exactly.
some random agency and be like, "I'm here to work." Let's roll.
Yeah. We do sometimes get cold emails and stuff. Like, I
Yeah.
appreciate the boldness of like, hey, I'm a web developer and I saw you guys are a web development agency in Norwich. We're like, sure. It has worked a couple of times, but like, it's a bold thing to do. And I think when it comes to, like you said, more people getting laid off. Two of my friends recently, respectively, like in different parts of Europe in the last week, have been laid off.
Mm.
And I try to do as much as I can as like basically scrolling through SEOjobs.com. Credit to you guys. I mean, like, hey, this looks like something, or like I will look at it in a slightly different way, or whatever. Keeping an eye on LinkedIn and all those other sources of stuff. Like, are there any other opportunities going on? What kind of things are you looking for? And I think a lot of people are, like you said, struggling with what is actually available out there. That they're being
Right.
forced into lower level work than they probably should do, and based on their qualifications and stuff, right? I don't know. you being an independent consultant for going on 5 years now, 5, 6 years, if I'm right, and me coming from the agency side of things, I think we're seeing a lot of shift around people moving towards freelance roles and more independency and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, well, I think and it's interesting because my career prior to going out on my own was agency side for 10 years. So I'm very familiar with, your role and your value, but we're in a really interesting time where it's like agencies, are able to provide value, but their overhead and profit margins need to account for right sizing the salaries. And I think a lot of these companies, they're getting to the point where it's like they realize when you need an army, like an agency is absolutely the way to go. But in some instances where you have the ammunition per se, you have the resources, you just need a director to kind of like point people in the right direction. It's like go with a consultant. Yeah, they're not going to be able to be full time. They're not going to be there, holding your hand, but there's just different opportunities now. And I think COVID really allowed companies to be a little bit more open minded to, I don't always have to have an agency and I don't always have to hire in house. Like there is kind of an in between. And that's where you get the overly used fractional insert role here.
Yeah, I think that leads on to a question I think I've covered a couple of times on the podcast before, and I always find fascinating is what the hell is an SEO job title anyway, right? I know we're saying that it's been around for 20 years, the internet's been around for so long, but like in the grand scheme of things, that's a very, very tiny sliver of time. And you get your usual ninjas and gurus and all that crap, of course. But even like I was literally explaining this to a colleague of mine the other day from the podcasting side of thing rather than the SEO side of things. And I was saying, what seniority do you think an SEO executive is?
Mhm.
And they were like C-suite. I was like, no, that's entry level in most agencies. Like, but it's executive. I'm like, I know. What does that mean? Some agencies also just use SEO manager as a thing because they
Yep,
manage client accounts, but they're not
absolutely.
managing people. That's the same level as an executive in another company. So, oh my God, there is so much inconsistency.
It's like
So I
account
guess,
management and project management too. Those can
right,
be
exactly.
account leads.
Yeah. Yeah, some people are doing 3 jobs at once and only got the job title of 1 and all that kind of stuff, and like you said, you get the fractional stuff of like, well, you're a fractional marketer, digital marketer, SEO specialist, consultant, all this kind of stuff. Have you seen a shift in job titles in general, the way people are like from the employer perspective, how people are framing it now that we're seeing, like we said, fewer jobs being actually posted? Has that changed at all?
Yeah, I think from what I'm seeing, the titles aren't changing all that much. The expectations are considerably higher.
Mm,
And I
interesting,
know
yeah.
this is gonna be kind of a follow-up question, but not only are you expected to do more, but most companies, whether they're in-house or agency, they're paying like 20% less now than they were a year or 2 ago. So
Jeez. Yeah.
everything is, a lot of us, we kind of laugh because we've all heard the do more with less. But I mean, that truly is like the definition. I mean, these job descriptions are no longer, we value a technical SEO to amplify, the work that our content teams and our strategic SEOs are doing. Now it's, we need somebody to do all SEO, all local, all technical. Oh, and if you can do PR, that's great. And you probably should know this AI stuff too. It's just the breadth is wider than it's ever been, and the expectations are just enormous.
Yeah, I've definitely felt that in my career. You end up getting hired as one thing, and they realize. We were joking about before we started recording, right? You end up being like the default tech guy for your friends and family. That also
Mhm.
happens in offices as well. I've fixed many printers and servers over the years of schools I've worked in and all kinds of stuff, like even outside of agency stuff. Like, oh, you're the nerdy guy with the glasses. You fix the printer. I'm like, okay, well, you have an IT company. You should be paying, but sure, okay. And now, like you said, I think that's being tied more into, and that very much ties into the conversation that I think was pretty much the entire overarching theme of last year of this podcast, pretty much was that whole SEO is no longer in a silo thing, right?
Right.
The big conversation we've all been talking about, the diversification of skill sets, the nature of not just training yourself as a, like you said, as a technical SEO. You also need to understand how content works, and then how to use new technologies like LLMs and AI coming involved as well, and understand how digital PR ties into the strategy as well, and all this kind of stuff. I think we saw a real kind of shift, especially with like niche site stuff and specialization. And then I feel like we're having a big swing back to, like you said, these broader kind of definitions and wider expectations of, you need to be doing social media and video and audio and SEO and web development and UX and web design. And, oh, can you do me a logo as well while you're there? It's like, oh my God, 15 jobs at once.
No,
I feel like that's been a thing that's been brewing for a while, right?
you're so right. And I think those of us that have been around for 10, 15, 20 years see it, as what it is. But we're in hourglass industry right now. Like when we first started out, the only differentiation was like we knew if you're going to be SEO, like don't try to be an expert PPC person,
Yeah.
because like there's enough within SEO. But at that point, it was still everything we talked about. It was the content aspect, the technical aspect, the outreach, and that's what an SEO was. Then, as our industry started maturing and we gained more experience, then it was we're going to double down on technical because we have content folks. And now, as things, as budgets are being decreased and expectations are, being increased, it's blowing out on the bottom again. Now it's great you've done technical, but what do you know about content? And what do you know about email? Like, this is the first time I would argue that, I kind of was saying hourglass, but the expectation and skill set is wider now than I think it was in the infancy of the SEO industry.
Yeah, is there a name for like a bottom heavy hourglass shape? I don't know, like a pear shaped hourglass kind of
I
thing.
was going to say pear shape, but I didn't know if that would be well received.
That's kind of how that works, right? I'm
Yeah.
like literally visualizing it in my brain, like, yeah,
Yep.
it's kind of
That's
how that
why
works.
fellow ADHD, it's like I got to draw with my hands.
Exactly. We're both here, just like, if you're not watching on YouTube or Spotify, Nick and I are just waving our hands around in vague
Join us for the
hourglass
high
motions.
five.
I think you're talking about, I was literally having a conversation with some of the team working on an e-commerce client earlier today, and one of the newest members of the SEO team here came up with like, what are they doing for email marketing at the moment? Do they have if these products have like an expiration date or they need to be refreshed or whatever it is, are we remarketing to those? And I'll be honest, like, it's been my account lead for the last 3-4 years. I've been at Candour the whole time I've been here. I was like, you know what? I've talked to them about the newsletter. I never really thought about remarketing. Like, that is an angle we should be thinking about. And exactly as you said, like, you need to be thinking about the business as a whole. And obviously, anyone who's worked agency side, as I know many viewers and listeners have, like you and I have, Nick, you end up having to talk about profit and revenue as the bottom line, right? That is the way you communicate with clients, the way you communicate with CEOs and marketing managers and all that kind of stuff. You can have all the clicks and impressions and all that kind of stuff, but how much money are you making me is going to be the driver, right? And I think you're totally right. The way it all integrates with itself and each other, and the different departments all tying into each other, it needs to be more integrated from a mindset and skill set perspective, let alone the agency who's working on the paid side of things needs to also talk to the organic agency, needs to also talk to the email people. It's literally you having a touch point for each of those departments in your own mind, a basic understanding, do some training, watch some podcasts, etc., that kind of thing. I think that is a huge shift that a lot of us are kind of feeling the squeeze of, if that makes sense. I think a lot of people are having those moments, like I mentioned just there, of like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Oh yeah, we should definitely be doing that. Yeah, I've been so, head in the sand, getting the work done, boots on the ground kind of stuff for so long. I've been writing content and doing all this stuff. We fix these technical problems. Oh yeah, we should probably go around to email as well. That's not part of our contract. That's not part of our retainer, but that's a valuable conversation to have that will likely drive revenue for the client, right?
Yeah. So, Jack, not to be self-promotional, but it's interesting that you say that because literally in yesterday's relaunch of the SEO for lunch, the title was literally like AI is not going to kill SEOs, but it's going to kill the lazy.
Lazy one.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what it is. Like, there's a line in the sand right now. I think people that are just gonna jam a square into a circle peg, AK, we're gonna do the old school SEO checkbox stuff. Those are gonna be the people that struggle. Those are gonna be the companies that don't see the return on their investment. The other half of that are these people that understand that the days of SEO equaling Google are dead. And
Yeah.
I hate saying that, but we can no longer sit in a silo. We need to think about and measure things. I brought this up in a different conversation. I think we almost have to embrace the paid search model of how are we building campaigns and not allowing Google Analytics drop down to default channel organic being our success or failure metric. It's more like this is the content that we created. This is now the incremental keywords that paid search is able to bid on that without this copy, they couldn't get a quality score making it worthwhile. This is the email that is repurposing the blog post and they're bringing traffic. All of this, I think that is how we need to be thinking, and how you scope that. I think we're all trying to figure it out, but we can no longer live in these silos. We have to be business partners for our clients. We cannot put a wall up and say, that's not SEO.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. There's I've mentioned it many times on the show before. Ross Simmons did a book, I think it was last year, Create Once, Distribute Forever.
Mhm.
And it's such a nice little distillation of that mentality, right? Like you said, when I approach the podcast side of things, I can think of it as, oh, it's a YouTube video, or, oh, it's an audio thing on Apple Podcasts or whatever. It's both of those things. There's also now video also on Spotify. Like, okay, so that changes that. And then also, we joked about it earlier. I'm going to clip out your little hot takes. Whatever controversial things Nick says, I will clip out and put them on Instagram and YouTube Shorts and TikTok. So that's 3 other platforms I'm now thinking about, because Shorts and full length YouTube videos are ranked in different ways and handled in different ways. Then also there's the blog post side of things. Like, should I just do a summary of the episode? Should I pull out a particular take or just post the transcript? How do
Yep.
we want to handle this? Like you said, then turning it into a newsletter or an email, all this kind of stuff. There are so many different ways to do that. And I'm so glad you brought up the paid side of things. This was something I mentioned close to the start of the year with Anu Adegbola, like how SEO and PPC should be working together,
Mhm.
and how much of like the quality score of a PPC landing page is kind of SEO best practice. Like a lot of it is like, do your headers make sense?
Mhm.
Can you read the text properly? Are your images like appropriate? And do they
Right.
have alt text and all this kind of stuff? Like, yeah, that's the basic fundamentals of a good web page that I understand from doing SEO for years. And like
But
you said,
Jack, let me pause
you
you for 1 second. Here's one of the
please,
hot
please.
takes. Attribution always screws SEO. Like, there's never a situation where attribution favors a free channel versus a paid channel. And that's the problem when you silo all of this. And when you sit there and say,
Absolutely.
we did our SEO optimizations to the page, and you know what? We rank 92 now, which is great. We made progress from 99, but that's not a measurable win. That's not, return on, ad spend, the ROAS. But our friends on the paid side, like you said, if the quality score went from a 6 to a 9, and let's say they got a 10% efficiency on each of their clicks, they might, depending on what the scale is, they might have saved thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
overnight. But guess who gets to take credit for that? Paid search, because that's and the point is, this is not, and this is the problem that I'm trying to get at, and this is where the hot take comes in. We have always been able to say with attribution, this works in this silo, this works in that silo. And I think what really is going to put us in an interesting situation is, I can't speak for Candour, but agencies that I worked at that offered both SEO, paid search, and uh, social media, they always went in and sold the idea of like, if you buy all of them, you get that efficiency because we talk to each other and we compare data. But in reality, like, it was a wish, not necessarily reality. So I think now that's going to be a requirement. Like we can no longer talk the talk about what is ideal. The people that are going to find success and the best return on their investments are going to actually do that. And it's not going to have a scope that says specifically, we'll do 2 hours of SEOs looking over paid data. Like it's just going to have to be the new expectation.
Yeah, 100%. I think that that ties us nicely into that skill set side of things. When it comes to, I mentioned a couple of friends recently got laid off. Like from the things you've seen in terms of the job postings and things like that, your experience in the industry as well, of course, like, are there particular skills or skill sets people should be thinking about if they have been laid off, or if they're worried about, their agency firing them or their whatever? Is there a particular angle, or is it a case of diversify yourself as much as possible and be aware of the other elements of digital marketing as a kind of broader understanding? Or should it be, if you're weak and technical, lean into content and vice versa?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I think the answer has kind of changed a bit over the years. But right now, like it's become more and more obvious that, again, I keep saying your checkbox SEO. And again, what I'm referring to is like all your on page components, any plugins you're doing, crawlability, technical, all these things, like they're table stakes at this point. Like that's expected. And if we line up 100 SEOs, like 95 of them are going to be able to do all of that. So the analogy that I've been telling is it's really easy for an SEO to go from 0 to 90. The difference between a fantastic SEO and a good SEO is how much progress are you making from 90 to 100.
Hmm.
All that to be said, what do I personally think are the biggest opportunities to bring you from 90 to 100? I don't think they're actually SEO skills. I am a huge, huge advocate for effective communication. If you follow me on LinkedIn, like I am as aggressive as possible to sit there and say, if you can't talk, like you might as well just quit this industry. Because you know what? As someone who previously identified as just a technical SEO, my dream role was put me in the back corner of the office and let me do audits all day long. Like that is what I wanted to be. Picking up the phone and calling a client was like the worst thing I could do. Right now, the biggest opportunities within our skill sets aren't actual SEO skills, if you will. It really is effective communication. Because here's one thing that AI is never going to be able to do. If Jack or I go into a C suite and we have 15 minutes of a CEO's time, if you use the word canonical tag or crawl budget or XML sitemaps, like you've lost. I don't care what else you have. Like they're already checked out and they're thinking about the 50 other things that they have to deal with that day. If you come in and the first thing you tell them is how you made them 50 grand based off of their 5K investment, guess who all of a sudden puts their phone down and is listening to you? Now, if you dare, you can bring up an XML sitemap. I still wouldn't suggest it. But I guarantee you at that point, they want to better understand because their brain now has switched from, I have to do 82 things to, wow, this is working. What can I do to scale and maximize this? And that requires what I've been talking about on multiple podcasts and writing. We need to unnerdify SEO. All of us come in, and I'm guilty of this too. We think of all of our jargon as like our $5, I'm so smart. I'm talking about crawl budgets and server logs. And if I'm saying those words, I must be smart. You know what? When I'm talking to the C suite, I talk to them like I've never even heard about SEO before. It's like I talk about dollars and visibility, brand visibility, like how we are, providing value to other channels. And those are the conversations that, again, you're talking on the same page. Like you've already been hired, you're already being paid, you may already be in payroll. You don't have to convince anybody that you are smart. So, again, a little bit of a tangent there, but one of those skill sets that I truly believe is going to be like AI proof and is what's going to make the difference between somebody who is looking for a job and is 90% and somebody who's at the 97% is going to be that ability to communicate and create performance narratives in a way that resonates with leaders to take action.
100%. Couldn't agree more, mate. Absolutely. I think it applies in the job application side of things, right? I joked earlier, like, 1,000 applications per job, and everyone just clicks quick apply or easy apply, single click things. I have done hiring in the past, and I was talking to one of funnily enough, our digital PR team earlier about how they could get a client to pitch to podcasts. And surprise, surprise, I'm their go-to podcast person. So I was like, I receive dozens of emails a week from podcast agencies or those you sign up and we'll get you on 10 different
Mhm.
podcast websites, or that Pod Match and Pod Pitch and all that kind of stuff. I'm not calling them out specifically. They're just ones I have heard of. And the generic autocomplete, auto merge kind of crap that ends up in my inbox, I say no to 99.9% or just delete it straight away. And I was joking, fellow podcasters out there, I know a few of you are listening and watching, add something like people do on their LinkedIn, an emoji or a something at the end of your podcast name. So, for example, on Spotify, we're not just Search with Candour, it's Search with Candour weekly SEO news and interviews. Nobody would say that in an email. So, hey, Jack, I really enjoyed the latest episode of Search with Candour weekly SEOs and news and interviews. I'm like, did you? Really? Wow. Autocomplete. Really enjoyed it with, hold on, Nick Leroy. Like, yeah, I don't think you did. You were talking about jobs and SEO. I like jobs and SEO as well. It's like, God's sake, like, it's just the basic ass stuff. And as much as we joke about that being AI never going to be able to replace us, that is the key to making connections at conferences, having conversations like we're having now, whether it's on a video call or a podcast or you're on stage. They can be game changers for you and your business to get buy-in from clients or meet that next client or make that next connection for the next person who might hire you. I know people who have had conversations at a conference and then, I saw you speak. I was at Brighton SEO. I was at SMX. I was at whatever. And I saw you speak. Would you be interested in working with us? And people literally get jobs from meeting people at conferences because you can talk. And like you said, you can be not the most technical, not the most content, whatever, but being able to talk the talk and walk the walk. But I think, like you said, a lot of people, we've kind of got I used the head in the sand kind of analogy earlier, right?
Mhm.
Like, are happy to sit at the back of the room and do the work and audit all day. But
Absolutely.
you need to be able to communicate the value of that, and value, revenue, all that kind of stuff is exactly what you need to have those conversations with clients and, as we like to call them on the show, the normies of the world, the
Normies.
partners, the family members, the friends.
So, Jack, it's funny that you should say that again. And you know what? I might as well just have like an SEO for lunch logo above my head right now. But one part that I did make in my last post was one of the best defenses you can have for like losing your job is building your network and building a personal brand. And the reason that I say that is as much as I love traditional job listings, I mean, SEOjobs.com, like it works out good. But you are competing not only with the ATS, what does that, AI reviews of your resumes, but hundreds and thousands of people that, again, they all have the same stuff that you do for being 90%. The best way to get these opportunities is to network, build some visibility so that people, when they hear that you are open to opportunities, you want them to come to you because there's no better opportunity to get a job than when you get a soft introduction from somebody internally. Like you have a leg up significantly. And that is how people are going to succeed here in 2025. My hope is that things are better by 2026, but we have a lot of people looking for jobs. I get messages all the time asking for help. And I realize personal branding and networking can't happen overnight, but start today. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
next best time from yesterday is today.
Yeah. We did a live podcast crossover with the SEO Mindset guys at Brighton back in April, and it was all about personal branding. And something I was like looking into and stuff, something I mentioned on that show was everyone is a brand these days.
Mhm.
It's 2025. We are all on social media. If you've got a LinkedIn profile, Instagram profile, whatever it is, tough shit, you're a brand. You are a personal brand, whether you like it or not, because you know who's going to search for those things is your potential employers and the hiring managers and the recruitment agencies and all that kind of stuff. If they
Yep.
find Jack Chambers Ward is an absolute crazy psycho on Instagram, seems very well put together on LinkedIn, but you use the same username across your social media profiles. You know that, right? It's like, and you're doing all this crazy shit on the other side of things. Maybe kind of be aware of that and be aware of what you're projecting. And I say this a lot, and you and I talked about this earlier as well. Like, the conversational nature of this podcast is very much me. Since I
Yep.
took it over from Mark 3 years ago, I kind of talk to you, Nick, how I'm going to talk to my wife or my friends or my family, give or take. Again, maybe a few less canonical tags here and there, but it's a similar kind of vibe, right? And I think that can be the difference maker, again, from a hiring perspective of, oh, you're just being able to have this conversation and click and understand and vibe with this person. It's a very wishy-washy way of talking about just vibing with the other person. Like, yeah, sure, easier said than done. But I think that can be such a huge difference maker when it comes to applying for jobs, meeting people, making those connections. And that can be a connection that will change your life. Like, I've told the story before, how I got hired here because Mark listened to my movie podcast and wanted to argue about Predator 2 with me. Also, by the way, we have an SEO and a PPC role. Are you interested? And it was the fourth anniversary of that. At time of recording a couple of days ago, and I posted it on LinkedIn, and everybody was like,
I saw
"Is
that.
this real?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's the screenshot of the real DM that Mark sent me on LinkedIn, completely out of nowhere. I was working for a different agency at the time. He was like, "I heard you talk about Predator. I like Predator 2. Do you want to come and work for me?" I was like, "Okay, yeah, sure."
So
And it was
it's
just that conversation, right?
Yeah, and that's amazing, but that's how it works. I'll just kinda double down with a similar story. You know, a couple of years before I went out on my own, I was in an unfortunate situation where I was let go from my job, and it was, like, the first week of December, which we know is just the worst time to
Oh,
start looking for new work because everyone's kinda checked out, and they're not gonna do anything till January. But there was an overlap for like 2 weeks at a previous job where my that manager was coming in and I was going out, and we had connected online, like, we've talked at some local events, and it wasn't like I literally came home, and after, like, feeling sorry for myself for, 20 minutes, I sent him a message on Twitter. I said, "Hey, I saw you guys are hiring for, like, a analyst role." I was like, "Any chance for wiggle room to, like, bump that to a manager or role?" Just like,
mm.
"Hey, can we talk?" And you know what? Not only were they able to get, like, the compensation and the title changed, but I was sitting at my new job, I think it was January 5th. Like, and that does not happen. I promise you, if you're going through your normal application process, it doesn't work like that. But his response, and it's too bad because I think he left Twitter, so I can't screenshot it. I wanted to show it, but it's just like his response when I sent that was like, "Hell yeah, let me talk to a few people." And then it was literally like, "We need you to come in. We need you to go through this. I can't give you preferential treatment." Cool. But I got that opportunity. And so I
Yeah,
think what you were sharing with Mark, like, that is just so cool. And again, long, answer short here, there is one reality that I think a lot of us in SEO forget, and this is especially helpful for when you're trying to sell or get new deals. People inherently like to work with people that they like. Now,
yep.
don't take like somebody enjoying your personality and who you are, like, it does not make up for bad work. But what it does is it can give you the benefit of the doubt if performance is ever in a weird spot because they're like, this person's genuine. They're not the sales sleazy car person. Nick's been helping us for, 2 years. So now all of a sudden everything's taken, a shit. It's like, what's happening? And you know what? Even with AIOs, like, this is where I'm seeing with my clients, like, who is open to having conversations and who is telling me that I need to, like, reach into my SEO dust bag and, like, throw more on their site. Like, that is just a different relationship.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's it's a really nice kind of way to frame those kind of conversations when you have that moment of, okay, yeah, I mentioned like I was vibing. It's like that's the very I'm trying to be cool, trying to be Gen Z about it, and in my mid-30s, but like there is that nature again coming back around to the personal brand, right? I did a talk last week about being authentic to your
Mhm.
brand and your values and how that's more important than ever now. And like we were saying earlier, from a personal perspective, from a company perspective, all that kind of stuff. And I remember, to continue my legit story of getting hired at Candour, I didn't have a CV because I wasn't looking for a job. I hadn't looked for a job for like 2 or 3 years. I was like,
Mhm.
I haven't updated my CV. You've not got all my current experience. Mark was like, don't worry about it. Hop on a call. We'll have a conversation. And unsurprisingly, Mark Williams Cook is good at understanding how much you know about SEO in a short space of time. And I remember getting on the call and seeing the board game Settlers of Catan over Mark's shoulder in the office, and I was like, "That's my kind of people right there. That's right there." And it was just a little, I did a movie podcast, and Mark likes board games, and here we are 4 years later. I'm hosting the podcast.
And
It's a
talk
weird
about being
journey,
able
right?
to just like build a little mini rapport. It's like
Yeah.
the amount it's really funny for anybody who follows football, like they know the Vikings, like one of their arch nemesis is like the Green Bay Packers, which is Wisconsin, right next to Minnesota. And ever since I put these up, for some reason I always talk to the Packer fan. But it's fun because even though we're on like opposing teams, it's like before we ever get into pitching a service or talking about your goals, it's just like a little fun ribbing, hey, I guess we can't be friends, but let's try a business relationship. And it evens things out. It's kind of like when you're just super nervous before you give a presentation, but you get going and 2 minutes into it, you're grinding.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you have that. I certainly have that kind of moment. There's I don't really want to shout out Neil Gaiman because of recent horrible stuff he's done, but there's a brilliant diagram of like, it's like the three golden rules of freelancing. You mentioned being a nice person and doing good work. And the third one is being on time or delivering work on time. And if you can do all three of those, you are sorted. People want to work with you for the rest of your life.
Jack,
However,
can I tell
exactly
you
as you
something?
said there,
Sorry,
go on,
go
mate.
ahead. Finish what you're saying.
No, I'll just finish this bit because if you don't have one of them, but you do have the other two, people will let you off. Exactly as you're saying there. If you're an asshole, but you deliver good work and it's on time, people will be like, yeah, Jack's not, I don't really like him, but he is really good at his job. And he's never missed a deadline. Or if you miss deadlines and you're really nice to work with and you do good work, it's like, I mean, he's slow, but he is nice to work with. And it's good work at the end of the day. People are willing to forgive
Mhm.
and give you a little bit of wiggle room, again, because you can build that rapport and you can do the good work. Exactly as you said earlier, Nick, 90% of us can do good work. Most
Mhm.
people can do good SEO at this point. The industry has been around long enough, and there are enough resources out there to learn it pretty quickly and get on board. And like you said, catch up with basically 90% of the industry very quickly. It's that little bit extra that is going to take you to the next level, push you, like you said, towards senior roles or that next journey in your career, right?
So I absolutely love that you said that. And I want to call it one thing because this was just mind blowing to me. Doing things when you say you're going to do it should not even be a bar that's like above the ground, but it's just like increasingly impossible for a lot of people. Now, again, being on the agency side, we've all been in the situation where the boss makes a promise and then you're kind of like, doing everything you can to make it. Those are situations. It's never okay to miss your deadlines, but communication does exist there. One of the biggest things that surprised me when I went out on my own was the amount of clients that we would be on a call and then we would agree, okay, next Friday I will send you this or Tuesday, whatever it is. And then I would do it and like accolades, like not you ranked us for number one for this keyword over day. You made me $100 million. It's like, wow, our previous agency, we just kind of assumed, plus or minus 10 days, or
Oh, God.
oh, we're not even prepared to like handle this because we just kind of assumed that you might get. And you think I'm being facetious, but Jack, I'm sure with some of your client experiences, again, when you say you're going to do something, do it because it goes back to your brand and your company's brand, your personal brand. And these are things that, again, you assume are just small. But the reason that I'm bringing this up and emphasizing it is those 3 items that you mentioned, it's almost like legs on a stool. Once you kick
Mm.
one out, your stool is not any of value. And especially if you are in a situation like me or an agency even, like, once the word gets around that you don't do good work or you don't do whatever it is that you say you're gonna do, you're done. Like, hope you like, working at the grocery store.
I mean, you said earlier, like it's a shrinking industry. As much as that is a
Mhm.
bad thing, it's a very small industry as well. Like it blows my mind how many people. I've only been working at Candour, like I said, for 4 years and been like active in the community for that long. But 5, 6 years ago, I've been following people like yourself, people like Mark, people like Lily Ray, Aleda, like all these amazing people with big followings and stuff like that. And then having that moment of like, oh yeah, I could just talk to those people. You can have that conversation, and you know that they're going to respond or give that feedback and have that moment to talk to you about it. When it
Yep.
comes to delivering on time, you can literally see testimonials for people's websites. Your company is Nick Leroy Consulting. Like your name on your face is literally your brand. And I think that we said so many people are going towards that direction. And if you're going to be doing that, it's a whole conversation I had with Matt Coley a few weeks ago as well. Like the freelance agency, building your own agency, how that all works, all that kind of thing as well. How much of your face do you want to put out there? All that kind of stuff. All that stuff matters so much. And like you said, a little thing, and again, ADHD people, I sympathize. We are part of you. We're bad at time management and time blindness and all that kind of stuff. But I talked to Dana Di Tommaso the other day as well. Like, get some systems that remind
Yep.
you of this. Physically write stuff down, set a timer, whatever you need to do to be that reliable person. And it's so funny. Like I'm literally reading the testimonials on your website. People are, Nick's so reliable. He's always great at delivering this. Like sometimes you do want to talk about the money side of things. You want to, like you said, you want to get the $100 million, the big number that looks sexy. But reliability is such a big thing. And I remember having a conversation with Mark a few years ago. I think it was like a whole thing on almost in the office and like around LinkedIn was like, would you rather, like thinking from a client perspective, have good work delivered, like 100 out of 100 perfect work, whatever that means, delivered 5 days late past the deadline? Or do you want like 85 to 90% good work delivered on time? And Mark was like, the second one, every single time. And I
Yep.
was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm not strict to deadline. Mark's like, you are crazy. You need to you like you said, you build up that reputation of reliability, right? And as soon as you start missing one deadline, they
Yep.
all cascade and it all goes wrong, and you're in a big pile of trouble.
Well, and remember too, I mean, SEOs of all people should understand that it's not white hat or black hat. There's every shade of gray. Like, over communicating, like, I'm not telling you, Jack, that I have never stressed like hitting a deadline. There have been times where it's like you can just tell that if I don't commit to grinding the next 2 nights, off the clock, I'm not going to make this.
Yeah.
So I have reached out to clients and just said, hey, here's the deal. If Friday is the day you're reliant, I would be a bottleneck if I don't do it. Like, you will have it because that is my commitment to you. But if you're telling me, "Oh, it's Friday," and you have no intentions of even opening my email until Monday morning, like, then is it
We've got
cool
an
if I
office
get
party on Friday, Nick. Don't worry about it. Like, well, then why did you set the deadline? It's Friday.
exactly. No, there's a whole lot to it, but I mean, that goes back to communication. And then also, I wanna give one little hack that has
Mm.
helped me out significantly. It's not an SEO tool that, anybody thinks of when you talk about the 5 best tools you need. But for me, and again, Jack and I were talking about this because I was recently diagnosed with ADHD. And one thing that I really, really struggled with the 10 years I did agency side, 5 years of being on my own until just this year, besides medication, was when I am on calls with clients, I can either take exceptional notes or I can be exceptionally present. I can't do both. And if I
Yep.
do both, I fail at both of them. So I pay for a tool called Fireflies, and I know a lot of people have kind of like an AI equivalent. but it takes your notes for you, and then it literally will send you a to-do list. Because we have all been in a situation where you're caught up in this conversation and you say, "Oh yeah, I can do it by Friday." And then in the back of your mind, you think it's Tuesday, but it's actually Thursday already. And you're like, "Oh shoot, like when did I do that?" And now you're kind of racking your brain. It's like, what do I do? And it's even worse if you have to message your, client and say, "What was that date we agreed?" So again, I just those are the type of tools, as you had said, ADHD is a real thing. I'm not going to say like, fix everything because, you've decided you're going to, but that doesn't mean that you can't invest in processes, because if you know that you're going to be forgetful, or you know that you tend to make promises that you're not going to follow through, like, lean into that. Like, you have to. One of the best compliment I've ever gotten as a consultant was not, like you said, ranking for this, driving this revenue, and all that is, you're authentic. Like,
Mm.
I lean into, this is what I believe. Like, I have no problem saying it out loud, good or bad. Now, the asterisk to that is you don't get to be an asshole. Like, you can say the things that nobody wants to hear while still being as respectful as possible. But there's a subset of clients, they like that. Like, and that's just a huge thing. Like, lean into your strengths, but even more so, as my wife always says, she's like, "I know what I'm really good at, but I know even more what I'm not good at."
Yep.
And I think that that is huge. I know we've talked quite a bit now about like agency and freelance, but even for a job seeker, when you go into these interviews, don't make up your NAP local citations answer because and read something. Say, "Hey, like, I've spent most of my time on the technical side. I know of local. I know that conceptually NAP is important, but if you're telling me that that's critical for this job, like, I'm all for it. I know where I can find the answers." Because that is going to be far more well received than, like me. I'll still call it like Google My Places or something like that. And it's going to be super outdated, and then I look bad.
Yeah, I think the willingness to learn. But I said earlier, there are so many free resources out there. Like we shout out Aleda Solis earlier with
Mhm,
SEO FOMO and stuff. Amazing resources and stuff just for free. There is so many podcast episodes, ebooks,
mhm,
webinar series, training courses, all this kind of stuff. And I think having that kind of conversation in the hiring process, like we said, oh, I have experience in SEO and PPC, and they're now asking for that broad definition, the broad set we mentioned earlier. I'm willing to learn that. And
yep.
that has totally been my experience here. Like, I wasn't planning to be on camera anytime soon. I've been doing audio podcasts for 15 years. And like you said, behind the scenes, squirreling away, doing, boots on the
Yep,
ground client work for
I get it.
6, 7 years now. But now, I'm one of the faces of the company by accident because I happen to be on camera every week. Like, here I am, and now I know a lot about lighting. Like, there you go. Can turn my lights on and off. I can change colors. I can do all sorts of stuff in the studio. And this is all me setting it up in this little cupboard in the corner of the office because I needed to upskill myself. And I just
Yeah.
went and taught myself how to edit videos and do stuff. And if you go back and look at last year's start of the videos, oh, my transitions are bad. Much better now. Audio's better, video's better, all that kind of stuff. But that is a thing Mark and I were having the conversation. Like, do you want to move away from client work and focus on the
Marketing.
Candour brand and
Mhm.
building this and think about events and all that kind of stuff? I think more and more people are shifting in that direction as well, right? And to kind of talk about the industry as a whole again from a job market perspective, there's been a big discussion recently in something I follow very closely, which is the video games industry. I don't know how much of it we're trying to de-nerdify SEO. Sorry, Nick, I'm taking it very nerdy. But the nature of like video game coverage and journalism and even development side of things, and this is also true with the film industry and a lot of the big money investment creative industries. There was a huge period of investment, and then it massively shrunk, and then
Mhm.
it massively inflated again. And you get these, the Grand Theft Autos and the Call of Duties, which are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars, some of the most expensive creative things that have ever been made, and they make all of the money that has ever been made ever. GTA 5 makes more money than anything that's ever made money. And then you also get one guy making a thing for his wife, and then that turns into Balatro, which wins Game of the Year and all that kind of stuff. And I have definitely seen that in that industry. And like I said, we're seeing the rise of independent filmmaking, people shooting films on their phones and stuff. And then also the huge $500 million budgets of the big Warner Brothers and Sony and Disney and all that kind of stuff. Is there a similar shift happening in terms of SEO? Because like I said, I've definitely felt the shift having conversations with people like yourself, Nick, people who are losing their jobs in agencies or in-house and moving to freelance. Is there also the other side of it, the expansion of the larger companies as well? Whereas like the enterprise side of things, are agencies growing, or is it a total shrinkage of more people are just going independent, I guess?
I like that question. I don't think I have a perfect answer, but right up top of my head is I think the answer is like yes, no, all the above. What I can say
I'm glad
definitively,
you didn't say it depends, mate. I
it did not
appreciate
say
that.
it
You
depends.
dodged it.
And just for the record, so we don't move away from it too much, like my video game skills kind of ended at Halo 2. So once we got to the point where like my son, like I'm basically mid because it drives me nuts that he wants to spend all his money on V-Bucks so he can buy,
Oh yeah.
the new sword or whatever. Drives me nuts. Like now I'm going to sound like the old man, get off my lawn, but but yeah, I think what it just comes down to is like technology is crazy these days. We, regardless whether you're an SEO or anybody in a marketing role, are being asked to do more. And I think this is one of the biggest takeaways that I am just trying to scream at the top of anything, any platform anybody will let me talk about. AI is cool. Like it does a lot of things. And one of the things that it does best is it's lowering the barrier to entry.
Mm,
Meaning, I am not a coder. But for SEO jobs, like I created an interactive mock interview with AI responses because you know what the alternative was? Skyscraper SEO content where the first person that did it was 59 questions, then the next person did 62, and it was up to like 118 or something like that. So I could either have done 200 or I could fundamentally change what I think was valuable for users. But historically, I'd have to go on like Upwork and try to tell somebody, can you do this for $1,000? Is it $200? Is it 20,000? Like I have no clue. So all that said, a bit of a tangent is AI is this amazing tool that while we are all being pressured to do more, whether you're enterprise, in-house, freelance, all the above, use it as that resource to help yourself learn and plug the holes for where you're weak. It's just such an opportunity. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but I don't think we get to have that conversation about silos and oh, scope says I can't do that, or my job is SEO, so therefore I can't do a social media post.
yeah, absolutely. I had to play around with the AI mock SEO interview thing the other day, and it's so interesting having that kind of experience. Like I said, interviewing with Mark Williams Cook and he's never seen my CV is a different experience to doing something like that. And I again told the story before. I was already a listener of the podcast before I was a host for the podcast, so I was aware of who Mark was and also asked and all that kind of stuff. So there was that level of like, oh God, like I can't mess around here. Like
Mhm.
Mark is the kind of person that I have seen take people down on LinkedIn, and he's created many enemies that way. He will do that to you in an interview as well if you're not careful. And having that experience, like job seekers out there, even if you're not necessarily literally looking for a job right now, I found it as a really nice little way because, as I said, like I'm trying to keep my skills sharp, right? Even though I'm marketing and partnership manager now and have been for over a year, I still want to keep my SEO skills sharp. I still want to be aware, like I said, of what's happening in PPC and social and all this other stuff and UX and web design and all that kind of thing. I listen to other podcasts about those things because I want to keep up to date and be able to have conversations like this where we can talk about that kind of thing. I was like, I wonder how I would do in an SEO interview in 2025 compared to how I did in 2021 or when I first applied for an agency in 2020. Like it's a whole thing of like, I wonder. It's a nice little measuring stick, right? And we were saying earlier, you can get to that 90% and push yourself past. It was a nice little tester for me to see like, how rusty am I? Do I remember what this means? Maybe I can talk about canonicals after all.
So, Jack, I got 1 point and one question for you. One, where we are as an industry, and again, kind of that idea that everybody's sitting at the 90%. When I first launched that mock interview, I originally created a scoreboard because I'm naturally
Oh
thinking,
my
how do I
God.
get people to do this and like go on social and say, look, I'm super smart. Like, you can't beat me. 10 years
My
ago, that
God.
thing would have blown up. All it was is like, Nick needs to be number one. Oh, Jack and Nick have been battling every single day. You know what I got? I was shocked. I thought my tool was broken. People wouldn't take it. And when people would reach out because they just like give me feedback for the mock interview tool, I'd say, "Hey, I didn't see you do the competition. Like, can you explain why?" And people are like, basically, I don't want to be told that I'm not good. Like they were
I don't want to be
embarrassed. They were
publicly
scared.
shamed.
Yeah, like they were scared of not being able to make the list. So again, it just kind of goes back into investing in yourself and always learning, which I said I had one question for you, and I hope this is eye-opening for some. You've hired people, I've hired people, we've probably done a zillion interviews between the two of us. How many times have you bypassed somebody who was exceptional from a skill set perspective, but their personality was like meh at best? Because I will tell you, I remember having an interview with one guy, and he answered everything better than I could have dreamed of. Like, just amazing answers. Like, obviously a super smart dude, but holy cow, like, cockiest guy I've ever seen. Like, he's sitting there, like, leaning back, like, practically putting his feet on the desk, and I'm just like,
Oh God.
"You're brilliant, but I would never work with you, and if I won't work with you, I can't expect someone from my team to work with you." And on the flip side, and these are the people that I always, because I'm a big underdog guy. We could talk about my story later on, but
Same. Yeah.
it's like, so if someone comes in and they're like, "Yep, I've been doing SEO for 2 years, totally no on-page SEO," those things that are just basic. But I'm really interested. I saw in Search Engine Journal they were talking about schema, and you're saying that's what you use on e-commerce. And I saw that John Mueller made a comment about it. Like, that's who I want to hire every single
Yeah.
time, because I can train him or her to get to that 90% on those hard skills very quickly. I can't teach you to not be an asshole. Like, I can't teach you to effectively
Nearly
communicate.
got a spit take from me there, Nick. Jeez. Ruined the whole studio.
Yeah. But Jack, I'm just curious. Like, I kind of went on that diatribe there, but I'm sure you've had similar interview experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, from a hiring perspective, for sure. We were talking about this. Like I said, we recently brought in 2 new members of the SEO team here at Candour, and I had that initial conversation. The never bring up politics, never bring up religion is the classic thing, right? Like,
Mhm.
unfortunately, I end up getting fairly political on this podcast sometimes, and I'm sure that puts some people off. But again, personal brand, aligning with values and all that kind of stuff. And I find it fascinating when people don't want to talk about that stuff at all.
Mhm.
And then you have that moment where somebody says, I dislike this politician or this policy or this thing. And the whole office goes, oh, really? Why's that? Do you want to explain yourself? Are you on the same side here? Are we like, what's the, are we aligned here? And you can't really ask that in a job interview directly. Like, so who did you vote for in the most recent elections? You're like, that's a bit of a weird question. But like you said, it's the way you're communicating. If you're talking about things that align with empathy, I think about the accessibility of users because I understand not everyone is as visually capable as your average user. So I've tested screen readers on the websites I've built before because I'm
Mhm.
aware of UX is relevant for SEO as well. It's like, oh yeah, you're thinking about it from really like human perspective and really, an empathetic point of view. That probably says a lot about you as a person rather than I churned out a bunch of AI crap, made my money and sold the website. I don't care. It's like, that's a very different, they could have the same job title and have the
Yep.
same, in theory, experience on the same website.
But
but
Jack,
have
you don't know how
completely
to do
different things.
hreflang? Well, then I can't possibly hire you because we have clients that are
Exactly.
in multiple countries.
Are
You
you
know?
doing hreflang on the header? You're doing it in the sitemap. Who
Yep,
knows? Like,
exactly.
yeah, I was having this conversation with a colleague earlier today. We were talking about no indexing a staging site and a production site, and they have this client has both, and how we would do that. I'm like, well, using Cloudflare, you could do X robots, I guess, but like you could do that at scale, and like you could do that if you're doing it in the header. I don't know what the developers are doing, and I can't remember which CMS it is, so we need to work that out and all that kind of stuff. But we just had a conversation with the client of like, how easy is this going to be for you to have a conversation with your
Mhm.
developer? Because they were two steps removed in that conversation. You and I can go back and forth as, unfortunately, sorry, SEO nerds, and nerd out about all this stuff all day long.
Well, I'm
But if,
self-identified as that.
oh
I'm just
yeah,
saying we
yeah,
gotta not speak our nerd to people that, don't identify as nerds.
exactly. We talk it behind closed doors, exactly. And we were having that kind of closed door conversation, and then again, like you said, project managers, account managers, those brilliant people that are able to translate that kind of stuff and have those kind of conversations. We brought them into the conversation, like, how do we frame this in a way that makes sense for the client, that they will actually understand, so they can go away and have that conversation with their developer?
Mhm.
Good question. That is the key to client buy-in, ongoing relationships, a client that will stick with you even when, oh, AI overviews have ruined our SERPs and all that kind of stuff,
Yep.
because you can build that rapport and that trust, right? And I think that ties us very nicely back around to our recommendations section, which is the final segment. I know you already mentioned a couple of hints, the communication skills being the big one.
Yep.
Is there anything else you would recommend
Mhm.
the listeners and viewers to be doing right now, to think about investing their time and investing their learning into? Any particular skills you would recommend for people to check out?
Yeah, so I think part of it is a recap as we had talked about. I think being able to lean into where you know some of your deficiencies are. So for me, note taking was one. So find a tool that can do it. I pay like $60 a year and it makes my life so much easier. Um, another thing is just that effective communication. I don't expect you to go up and headline MozCon. Like that's not what effective communication is. But volunteer to speak with people. Like when you have interns, there's nothing more validating for if you know your shit or not is if like you can talk to an intern and get them to understand 25%. Meet with people. If you are normally not in a client facing position, like ask to go with to the client or jump on the
Yeah,
call. Like push yourself. Like these are the things that are going to make or break. We talked about that 90 to 100. And then the other thing I'd say too, it's kind of I speak on both ends. Like I love AI and what it's possible, but like you really got to be careful with like the shiny object syndrome, because at the end we have a fairly good idea what levers pull, results, and we need to do that. And now, so it's actually actionable. The one tool that I actually believe is underutilized and everybody has access to it for free is Google Search Console.
classic, mate.
I
Classic.
love I love third-party tools, like SEMrush Boy over and over again. Love doing competitor analysis, but it's third-party data. It's their best guess. Like, don't rely on that when you have this whole subset of real data. I mean, don't guess when you don't have to. There's only so much that we get to kind of know for sure in SEO. So leverage the tool. So that's just one of my hot takes there is just like use the
100%.
tools that are being given to us, use analytics, talk to people, ask questions, understand the business implication of what you are doing. You are not trying to get somebody to rank better. You are trying to increase the brand's visibility so that they can grow. Like that's everything that I'd suggest. That's not a tool. It's all the above.
100%. Yeah, I think that is that growth of brand visibility. Like I briefly mentioned AI overviews. Now we've not really touched on how much the SERPs have changed and anything like that. Is a whole other conversation and a
Yep.
whole other podcast. But that brand visibility and the growth and how that has the expectations have shifted and are going to continue to shift as more and more of the various different places you can search, even outside of Google, as we are saying earlier, are shifting and changing. that's more important than ever. And again, having that, being able to communicate that effectively to clients and reframe that conversation to be like, yes, clicks are down. However, well, sure, this has changed. So instead, let's look at this metric. I'm using a different tool here for a reason, and explain that. I literally had this conversation with a reporting call with a client the other day. Like, I used to use this tool for this purpose. I'm now using this tool for this purpose. Here's why I think it better explains the value of the traffic that you are getting and how that brings value to you as a business. And they were like, yeah, if you'd have just swapped the charts around or whatever, that would have made no sense to me whatsoever. I'm so glad you explained that and went through that and discussed that. And it can be tiny little things like that can make a big difference. And yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And Jack, if I can add one more thing that I'm really surprised more people don't do, is have an opinion. And don't be no, no, no.
Hold
I
on,
know
hold
that's
on.
not like
There's
that
too
sounds
many
silly.
opinions already, Nick. Hold
No,
on
I
a minute.
know, but you and I both know this. Like, there are so many Google parrots. You can't have this because it's against the terms of service. You have to do this because 82 blog posts said to do it. Like, I'm not saying be contrarian for the sake of like causing
Yeah, there's the
arguments,
other end of that as well,
but
right?
like a really good example of this. I remember being in the agency. We were in like a team meeting, and for some reason, we were getting to the point where it's like we talked about like H1 headers. And we had 3 or 4 people, that's a best practice. Maz says do this, Matt Cutts at the time says do this. And I was just like, screw H1 tags. Like, if it's gonna take the technical team 20 hours to rechange the code because
Oh my
they're on
God.
an antiquated CMS and it's like Frankenstein, I don't give a shit. Google is not ranking you better or worse because you have H1 bracket title bracket. It's the fact that like you have it there and it's emphasized within your page. And the team just like ridiculed me. Like, how could you be doing this for so long, get the results that you
You call
have?
yourself a technical
Yeah,
SEO. How dare
exactly.
you?
And it's like, you don't even want headers. And what was hysterical about that is, so then I just I mean, I never deviated. I was like, this is how I feel. It's cool that we have different opinion. But years, that was like the inside joke. Nick, I bet you don't like title tags either, right? And then we were at a conference, and one of the Google reps, I think it was, came out and said the H1 tag itself is not what's providing the value. It is having a like larger set of text that you know demonstrates
I'm imagining them saying a really offhanded comment and you just standing and being like, yes,
I
and one
literally
guy in
like,
the audience.
and I just kind of did this, and it was funny because even like one guy that like wasn't even working with us at the time but was there for the conversation sent me a text, and he's just like, oh my god, header tags. And it was just like, I've never been so validated. And it's funny, so now I'll come back around, and if someone says RH1s are important, I'm going to say yes with like an asterisk, because if you're building a new template, like, I'm not going to be so defensive to be like, don't put them in. What I'm saying is, and I think Rand Fishkin had always like kind of championed this idea, is if a best practice is going to cost you an arm and a leg, either physical dollars or the resources to change it, screw it. Like,
Yeah.
sorry, I am one of the people, and I'll go against most of the SEOs here. When I do my technical audits, as long as your site speed isn't like 42 seconds, that shit doesn't even go on my audit. And you want to know why? Because I
But
have
the
yet
core
to
web
meet.
vitals, Nick, that's so
I know.
important.
But I mean, when was the last time you worked with an enterprise team that has told you that they can fix it with anything shy of like, we need to, migrate to a new CMS? We need to do a complete rewrite of the code. You're
Yeah.
telling me that you're
We
going
need
to
a
take
complete different
all those
CDN that's going to
resources?
cost us 8 times as much.
Exactly. So basically, so do you want to match core web vitals, or do you want to put a checkbox behind every other one that you have? And tangent there. But again, I think that's really important. And as someone who has hired yourself as well, Mark, all these other people, I think being able to just like have an opinion, articulate it, and just kind of like stand by it. And also like say, hey, like, I was wrong. I remember when canonical tags came on, and I was like, I didn't understand it, so I was like, who needs those? So I just think that that's really important. And that, again, in my opinion, is when we talk about going from 90 to 100, being able to go against the grain. To me, that goes from 90 to 95.
Yeah. And it's going to be on your headstone as like, right about H1s, wrong about canonicals. Nick
Yep.
Leroy, like,
Here lies Nick Leroy, and I hope they put the H1
quote
tag on
unquote
my name.
technical SEO,
Yeah,
didn't
exactly.
believe in canonicals.
Oh, no, see, too bad my wife could care less, but it'd be funny because she should put an H1 tag on my name for the,
Oh, there we go. Or just make your name big and bold and be like,
Yep.
see,
You know
it's
what?
for
They'll
emphasis.
probably no follow my name too because,
Hey, there we go. There we
why
go.
get the value, right?
Right, let's finish off with something fun, Nick. And doesn't have to be SEO related, can be a video, a book, an article, whatever you like. What have you been enjoying recently that you'd recommend to the viewers and listeners?
So one thing we talked about earlier, I was recently diagnosed with ADHD, and one of the punishments of that was I was never a really good reader, in the sense that
Mm,
I can always read. I read a book, I can flip through the pages, but I never comprehend what it was. So I was a lot more, I just didn't it gravitate towards like business books. So now that like I have a better idea, and I also learned that Audible, like, when people are reading a book to me, is a game changer. So I've been, reading or listening, I guess I should say, to a lot of books, and there's two books that I feel like have really changed my mindset on quite a few things for my business. One is the Go Giver series, and literally the TLDR for that is like give, 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 with no expectations of getting it back. But in
mm,
reality, it does go full circle. And I tell people a lot, like, that's my go giver for like SEOjobs.com, because I'm not making a ton of money. If anything, I'm losing money running that site, but it's a need that we have in our industry, and it's building goodwill. So hopefully someday when someone's like, do you know a consultant that might be able to help me out with SEO? Chat with Nick.
yeah. It could be
So,
a fact of like a client would hire someone and then, oh, they're looking to work with somebody that went, oh, yeah, I got a job through SEO Job Stuff. That's run by that consultant guy. Maybe you should talk to him. Like little thing,
exactly.
again, the small industry you talked about earlier, the reputation, the brand, it all comes back round, right?
Yep. And then, the other book, or it was, I believe it's called The Psychology of Money. And just as a business owner, it was really interesting because instead of like berating yourself for having your thoughts, and a lot of people have different, money identifications, but it just was really good. It just kind of helped me better understand, like, why do people feel this way? Why do
Mm,
people take this action? Like, why does this stuff happen? And it's like actual data driven, and for me, just like as a business owner, one of the biggest hurdles that I have as a solopreneur is scale. And coming from the agency world, where every agency is super excited to say we grew by 812% every year,
yeah.
like, you don't necessarily get that on the individual front. So being able to identify enough is a big deal for me. And I feel like part of it was addressing what is enough for earnings, what is
Mm,
enough for time with my family, what is enough for being able to give back, and all that kind of stuff. So I guess all that to be said is, there are really boring business books, but there are business books that are worth, listening to. I do it when I walk my dog. And if you get one or two nuggets from it, I feel like it just challenges how you think about things. And there's a lot of times where I just come back and it's like I jot down some notes because it's like it encouraged me. So I just think that's a big opportunity. They're not SEO tools, but like I said, there's takeaways from everything.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. I will put links for everything we mentioned from Fireflies to Google Search Console, I guess. I feel like I don't need to put a link for that. Hopefully, you can find that yourself. The Go Giver, Psychology of Money, and of course, the links to find you, Nick. Where is the best place to follow you? Whether that's the newsletter, whether that's SEO jobs, whether that's your consulting business, where's the best place to find you, mate?
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely you can send me an email directly from my contact form on nickleroy.com. I would love it if you join me at the lunch table, my weekly SEO for lunch newsletter, where again, I just switched it up. So a lot more hot takes. If you like some of the controversial comments I made on this podcast, you're going to love
Do
that.
you believe in H1s? Subscribe
Exactly.
now.
If you believe in H1s, don't subscribe.
We
And then
don't want you.
yeah. And then last but not least, again, I run SEOjobs.com. It's an opportunity for anybody that is looking for a role. Again, we know that the economy is kind of in a weird spot. It's impacting jobs. And I work really, really hard to make sure that all of these roles are of quality. And then it's just an opportunity for you to get the best chance possible to get in front of the companies that are hiring right now.
Amazing. Yeah. Hugely appreciate all the work you're doing, mate. Genuinely, like you said, giving back to the community in that way that you're doing with SEO jobs, I think has helped so many people even to open up that conversation and have a place to go to have those kind of conversations, let alone transforming people's careers and helping people survive these horrible, tumultuous, consistently unprecedented times is hugely appreciated. Though, thank you, man. I appreciate it. And I look forward to more hot takes at the dinner table and the lunch table as well, depending, because England, we say
That's
both.
true.
Don't get me started. Some people in the north call lunch dinner. It's a whole thing.
Oh yeah,
Upsets
we
me
can't even
completely.
talk about time zones because I always get the cheeky comments. It's like, I'm from Asia and this comes at 2 a.m. I was like, well, you know what? Enjoy your ham sandwich at 2 a.m. It's like,
Awesome.
yeah,
Thank
but
you,
thank
man.
you
It's been
so
a
much, Jack.
pleasure to finally sit down. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I appreciate it. We'll have to do this again. Thank you again, Jack.
Definitely. We'll have an annual catch up of the state of SEO jobs, ADHD, and everything in between.
I love it. And Halo 2. You got to remember that
And
too.
Halo as well. Exactly. And that wraps up this week's episode of Search with Candour. Hopefully you enjoyed my conversation with Nick as much as I did, and hopefully you learned a bit about the state of SEO jobs in 2025 as well. Like I said, if you are thinking about job searching, if you're looking for a new role at the moment, SEOjobs.com is the place to go. Of course, there will be links for everything else Nick and I talked about throughout our conversation in the show notes down below, so please do go and check those out. In the next coming few weeks, I've got some brilliant guests. I've got Ramon Eichmans, I've got Chris Ridley, I've got Harry Evans, Mark Williams-Cook will be back in the studio, and that's just the next month. I've got some fantastic interviews and guests. We're talking all about a wide range of things, actually. Chris is talking about the balance of PPC and SEO, and Chris has a really interesting method of basically making sure you are balancing your paid and organic listings really nicely without overspending and saving you money as well, which is a really, really cool thing. Ramon and I talk about the future of SEO. Should we call it SEO anymore? Are the people that call it AIO or GEO or EIEIO or whatever the hell they're calling it these days, do we need to reframe and rethink that? And also, Ramon and I talk about the value of organic traffic and how that has shifted over the last few years as well, and how you can track that for yourself and your brands as well. Like I said, Mark Williams-Cook and I will be back in the studio as well. We'll be basically diving into the latest SEO news, the big stories and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, plenty more guests. I'm about to record one in about 15 minutes and it's going to be excellent, and it will come out in a few more weeks after that as well. So I will leave a little tease for that as well. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching or listening. You watch or listen right to the end. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. If you haven't already and you've made it this far, like down below, leave a comment, all that good stuff, and get involved and basically join the community. It's a really nice group of people in the comments usually, so please do join us and hang out there as well. In the meantime, like I said, I'll be back next week as usual. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.